Welcome, Neogenians, to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue, and I am an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to create a new world. And today we are taking a deep look at the Satanic Bible and the Antichrist. This is going to be a very blasphemous video, so if you're someone who's easily offended, this is probably not the one for you. We're going to be diving into the first book in the Satanic Bible, the Book of Satan, associated with the element of fire, as well as taking a look at the Antichrist, which was highly influential for me. So we're going to get started right away. It's going to be really good here. But as always, please like and subscribe. And if you enjoy my work, consider supporting on YouTube or on Patreon by becoming a member. You can hit the join button right below this video and check out all the different perks you can get. You can get access to all of our members-only videos, members-only live streams. There's a new one every single week. You can get access to our Discord server where we have Neogenian classes and study groups. Anyway, check it out. You get all kinds of great things, and it's the best way to support my channel. Also, I want to remind you all that my book series is out. Well, 2 books in my book series is out. If you don't know where to begin, my first book is out right now, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. And this describes how to reach a higher consciousness rationally. My second book, Meta-Rationalism, The New Science of Mind, describes how we can understand that this is a mathematical reality and you are an eternal being. So check out the link in the description of my video for that. And let's begin. Like I said, we're taking a look at the Satanic Bible as well as the Antichrist. Now, like I said, I grew up as a Christian. I'm an ex-Christian. I stepped away from Christianity. And I was, to be quite upfront, I am not a Satanist, and I never was a Satanist. But the ideas in the Satanic Bible are very powerful, and we're going to be taking a look at them today. However, what I was influenced by was The Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche. And this is an extremely powerful book, which, like I said, was highly influential on me in breaking away from Christianity. And as we read the Satanic Bible, we're going to see how a lot of it is actually inspired by Friedrich Nietzsche, has very similar elements to the Antichrist. And we're going to be exploring what the Antichrist is as well. But first, we're jumping into the Satanic Bible. And let's see, I really want to emphasize here as we begin is a little bit about what Satanism is. If you haven't seen my video, Satanism versus Luciferianism, check it out. It's pretty short. It's like 15 minutes, 18 minutes, something like that. And it gives a breakdown of Satanism as well as Luciferianism. They're very different, by the way. But we're talking about Satanism, specifically the Satanic Bible. And so the Satanic Bible, it's not about worshiping the devil. It's about rejecting traditional religious rules and encouraging people to be independent and self-reliant. So the devil or Satan isn't considered an actual real being, but is rather a symbol that represents independence and carnal desires. So Anton LaVey is the founder of the Church of Satan. He founded it, I believe, in 1966 and wrote the Satanic Bible in 1969. And LaVey is basically talking about how we should embrace our natural desires and reject the moral rules that society forces on us. So the Satanic Bible is divided into 4 main parts. And each of these parts is named after an element. There's the Book of Satan, which is associated with fire. There's the Book of Lucifer, which is associated with air. There is the Book of Belial, which is associated with earth, and the Book of Leviathan, which is associated with water. Today, we're going to look at the Book of Satan, which is associated with fire. Now, that being said, if you want to see me do videos on the other parts in the Satanic Bible as well, tell me in the comments, let me know. I always look at the comments to see what you guys are interested in. So if you want to see videos on the other parts as well, tell me in the comments, I pay attention. So the Book of Satan is all about challenging traditional religious teachings and societal rules. It basically says that feeling guilty and thinking of things as sins are ways to control people. And instead, it encourages us to enjoy our lives and to indulge in your desires, as long as you're not hurting other people. So Satan, again, here is seen as a symbol of freedom and rebellion. We're going to see how this ties into The Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche as well. But let's just start right away so that you can get an idea for what we're talking about here. Now, so we're going to take a look at the Satanic Bible. Before we read from the Book of Satan, I want to read to you a couple quotes from the preface. So this is written by Anton LaVey. Like I said, this is the preface. And these are some important quotes here. So LaVey says, "This book was written because, with very few exceptions, every tract and paper, every secret grimoire, all the great works on the subject of magic, are nothing more than sanctimonious fraud, guilt-ridden ramblings, and esoteric gibberish by chroniclers of magical lore, unable or unwilling to present an objective view of the subject." So I agree with this to some extent. I'm not going so far as to say that everyone who wrote everything on magic is a fraud or a charlatan, but like particularly in my books, I have a point of view that's kind of analogous here, where basically we need to put the idea of higher consciousness on rational ground. So I don't have the same beliefs as LaVey, but the idea of that we need to take a serious look at these things in a rational and logical way. I definitely respect that idea. Now, Anton LaVey is an atheist, and LaVeyan Satanism is an atheistic religion, so they don't believe in God and generally reject the supernatural. So as we'll see, by the way, if you want to see videos on satanic magic as well, let me know, because they do believe in magic. They call it materialist magic. There's lesser magic and greater magic. But this is about understanding how to manipulate the psyche rather than manipulating anything supernatural. But it's very interesting. But anyway, let's continue here. LaVey continues, "Writer after writer, in efforts to state the principles of white and black magic, has succeeded instead in clouding the entire issue so badly that the would-be student of sorcery winds up stupidly pushing a planchette over a Ouija board, standing inside a pentagram waiting for a demon to present itself, limply tossing the I Ching yarrow stalks like so many stale pretzels, shuffling cards to foretell a future which has lost any meaning, attending seminars guaranteed to flatten his ego while doing the same to his wallet, and in general making a blithering fool of himself in the eyes of those who know." So this is something that I would generally agree with as well, is that a lot of magical systems are written in such a confusing way, either deliberately or just by the nature of them being symbolic systems, is that most people who end up studying magic don't really know what magic is about. And that's basically what Anton LaVey is saying right here. Basically, Anton LaVey is saying, look, all the books on magic are so confusing that people don't know what they are doing. And they end up shuffling cards, trying to tell their future, standing in a pentagram, waiting for a demon to appear, pushing a Ouija board around. And LaVey is saying that's all, that has nothing to do with what this stuff actually is. And it makes those people look like fools in the eyes of those who know what it is actually about. And, I to a certain extent, I agree with this. I think that it has become very confusing and ultimately can be a roadblock for people because, take tarot cards, for example. Tarot cards aren't tools to tell the future. And that's what a lot of people think they are. People think tarot cards are going to tell my future. I'm going to consult the cards. I'm just going to give this quick example, then we'll move on, because I think it's important, because some people need a concrete example. So tarot cards, but what are tarot cards really? What tarot cards actually are is they form a canvas for psychological projection. What that means is it's a way of enhancing your intuition and communicating with the unconscious mind. This is because the unconscious communicates in symbols, in symbolism. That's like when you have dreams, your dream symbols are very, this has to do with like depth psychology and Jungian psychology, when you can do dream analysis. And so basically tarot cards are kind of like dreaming awake. You're able to look at these cards and your intuition will pick up on certain pieces of imagery. And then you can examine the pieces of imagery that jump out at you and try and figure out what your unconscious is trying to tell you. So it's a way of communicating with your unconscious. It's a way of enhancing your intuition. What it's not about is telling you exactly what's going to happen in the future. And that way it becomes a crutch rather than a tool to help you. See, all these tools of magic really should be enhancing your power or our collective power. So take that tarot card example. When you use it correctly in a projective way, it enhances your power because you're connecting with your unconscious and sharpening your intuition. But if you use it in a way where, you think it's telling you the future, now the cards have power over you rather than enhancing your power, because now, I don't know if I should go out with that person, or I don't know if I should go to this job interview. Let me see what the cards say. Let me see if the cards say. And now you're treating the cards like a god, where what should I do? I don't know. And the cards have control over you. And so you've given your power away. So any of these systems, when used correctly, should be enhancing your power or our collective power together, not stripping you of your power or causing you to give up your freedom. All right. So that's very important. So anyway, I agree largely with this. And so LeVay also says, herein you will find the truth and fantasy. So LeVay says, in here you will find truth and fantasy in the Satanic Bible. Each is necessary for the other to exist, but each must be recognized for what it is. What you see may not always please you, but you will see. And this is very intelligent as well. So basically he's saying in this book, you're going to find truth and fantasy, but we're going to call each for what it is. We're going to call truth, truth, and we're going to call fantasy, fantasy. So this is, for example, why the image of Satan is used. What is true? Truth is, according to Satanism, independence, personal power, and indulgence, things like this. Satan is the fantasy. Satan doesn't exist. LeVay and Satanists don't believe in Satan, but they still use the symbol of Satan to represent their ideals. So that's what LeVay means when in here you're going to find truth and fantasy, but we're going to call each one for what it is. And that is also a idea that I think that I think is commendable, in that, like in the Neogenian system, it's based on reason, but we can also have legends and archetypal imagery as long as we call it out for what it is. We go, okay, we know when we talk about Lucifer or Christ or whatever, we know we're talking about a state of consciousness, a state of mind. We're not literally worshiping a being, or, different things like that. And so that also I agree with, I think is a very good point. Now let's see, LeVay, we're still not in the book of Satan. So LeVay says, this is the age of Satan. Satan rules the earth. The flesh prevaileth, and a great church shall be builded, consecrated in its name. So now LeVay is really laying out and declaring this to be the age of Satan. And this is an age that, according to LeVay, will be ruled by everything that Satan represents. So the flesh prevaileth, and that means embracing human nature instead of denying it. Because Christianity is typically about denying human. The human nature is sinful and evil. We have to deny human nature and have a relationship with God and Jesus to purify us. And Satanism says, no, the flesh prevaileth. The human nature is to be embraced. A great church shall be builded. The church of Satan is what he's referencing. Consecrated in its name. No longer shall man's salvation be dependent on his self-denial, and it will be known that the world of the flesh and the living shall be the greatest preparation for any and all eternal delights. Hail Satan. So that's the so we read a little bit from the preface, a couple quotes from the prologue. Let's take a look at some quotes from fire. The element of fire, the book of Satan. And like I said, we're going to be taking a look at this, and then I'm going to be talking about the Antichrist. And if you haven't heard of the Antichrist before, stick around for that, because that's going to be very important, very critical, because we're going to uncover some very powerful ideas. And I'm going to be, like I said, I'm not a Satanist, and I never was, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about why that is, and why I was influenced by Nietzschean ideas, like the Antichrist rather than satanic ideas. Now, that being said, I don't have anything against Satanism. I think that it is a great alternative to mainstream religion, but I'm going to give you my opinions, my views, and my experiences as an ex-Christian and someone who's been, devoted their entire life to studying hidden knowledge and just knowledge, philosophy, occultism, all that sort of stuff. So, but anyway, let's read some of the excerpts here from the Book of Satan. So LaVey says, and this is sort of written from the point of view of Satan. I gaze into the glassy eye of your fearsome Jehovah and pluck him by the beard. I uplift a broad axe and split open his worm-eaten skull. Now, this is, of course, the part that's talking about fantasy here. This is symbolic imagery, but you can see the symbolic imagery of Satan versus Jehovah. Satan destroying Jehovah is symbolic for the power of the self overcoming the Christian value of denying the self. That's essentially what this is representing. And by the way, I'm just reading a few little quotes here and there. If you're interested in this, go check out the Satanic Bible for yourself. Go buy it, go read it. Right off the bat, I don't agree with everything in it, but there's a lot of quotes in here that I can't read because they're just too much for YouTube. But let's see. So LaVey continues writing as Satan. Behold the crucifix. What does it symbolize? Pallid incompetence hanging on a tree. So once again, showing the symbol of the cross associated with Jesus, associated with Christianity, represents for Satanism incompetence, stupidity. And LaVey says, too long, right and wrong, good and evil, have been inverted by false prophets. Okay, so this is really important. Too long have right and wrong, good and evil been inverted by false prophets. We are going to take a close look at this. As you remember, I talked about Friedrich Nietzsche in his book, Beyond Good and Evil. So we can see that LaVey was highly likely influenced by all this because it's very similar. So Beyond Good and Evil is a book written by Friedrich Nietzsche that talks about master morality versus slave morality, and essentially that morality was inverted by the weak so that the weak could gain power by making weakness a virtue. And we'll be exploring what that means in a minute, but that's important to keep in mind as we compare the Satanic Bible with Beyond Good and Evil with the Antichrist. And LaVey continues by saying there's nothing inherently sacred about moral codes. We're going to see this is reflected in the Nietzschean ideals and Beyond Good and Evil as well, where Nietzsche calls for a transvaluation of all values or a revaluation of all values in defining our own. So Nietzsche was all about us defining our own morality, us defining our own. And again, I don't agree with everything that Nietzsche says. Morality is not something that is that's a whole nother video for another time. But it doesn't mean just do whatever you want. I just want to make that clear. LaVey says the chief duty of every new age is to appraise new men to determine its liberties, to lead it towards material success, to rend the rusty padlocks and chains of dead customs that always prevent healthy expansion. So this is also a very interesting quote. Here LaVey is saying that when a new age is being born, and that's what we're all about in the Neogenian, the new beginning. We're all about this new age being born. But what LaVey is saying is that when every new age is arriving, the duty of those leading it are to destroy the padlocks and chains of dead customs that are holding us back. So to free humanity, for whatever new age is coming, there are those who have to free humanity from the chains that are holding them back. And so this is exactly what we're about in the Neogenian system, is of course helping people come to a new awareness, reaching all awareness by, and that's what my first book, Neogenesis, is all about, is about removing all of the systems of conditioning so that one can be free to build themselves. Now, so again, I think that's very well said, highly commendable. I agree with this. One thing that I don't agree with is that LaVey says to lead it towards material success. So again, Satanism is very much a materialist philosophy, and is really opposed to the supernatural. And supernatural doesn't necessarily mean, like ghosts and goblins, but just something beyond the natural, the metaphysical domain. And it's about basically like the here and now and the physical world, where that's an important aspect, but we have to also in our system acknowledge that we are eternal beings. And so this is one thing that's attracted me to Nietzschean philosophy, and I'll be explaining why I was attracted to Nietzschean philosophy rather than Satanic philosophy, is that Satanic philosophy is very much about embracing human nature, which is great. That's fine. We want to be able to embrace our human nature. But Nietzschean philosophy was about basically transcending human nature and going beyond human. Nietzsche wrote a book called Human All Too Human. Nietzsche also said that the great thing in man is that he is a bridge and not an end, meaning that humanity is just a transitory phase to something higher. And Nietzsche was trying to create a philosophy that was to bring about this new kind of human, this higher human, what he called the ubermensch or superman. And so Nietzsche's philosophy is very much about transcending limitations and going beyond our humanity. Satanic philosophy is more about embracing humanity, which we want to do when we want to enjoy life and have pleasure and indulge. There's nothing wrong with that, but there is this aspect of self-transformation and overcoming as well. But anyway, let's continue and see what else we have here. So continuing in the Book of Satan, LaVey says, love one another, it has been said, is the supreme law. But what power made it so? Upon what rational authority does the gospel of love rest? Why should I not hate mine enemies? If I love them, does not that place me at their mercy? So there's an interesting point here, basically going, why should I love everyone? Why should I love my enemies? Shouldn't I hate my enemies? Wouldn't loving my enemies put me at their mercy? And there's a couple things to say here. I think that a middle ground is good. Yeah, just loving everyone to the point where you're letting people walk all over you and take advantage of you, that's not good. And that is what Nietzsche would call a slave morality, because now you're letting you're letting people take advantage of you. And guess what? People are really easy to control that way as well. If you're just like, oh, love. But also, though, we want to remember, and this is what comes from believing the materialist philosophy. In a materialist philosophy, we're all separate beings. In a materialist philosophy, we are all fundamentally separate beings. In a metaphysical philosophy, in many of them, we're all interconnected. And in our system, the Neogenian system, we are all interconnected. So we recognize that interconnection. And by the way, in the Neogenian system, all of this is based on reason. The principle of sufficient reason is the highest principle in our system. And so this isn't, any kind of like woo-woo or mysticism. This is based on logic and reason and understanding the rational foundation of existence and building up from there and realizing that this is a mathematical reality. But mathematically speaking, we can understand that we're all interconnected at a fundamental level. We can understand this even empirically as we look at the results of quantum mechanics, specifically quantum entanglement. It shows evidence for this. But my point is, if we understand it that way, we can understand that, like I said, you don't want to love your enemies to the point where they're walking all over you, but you do want to recognize that we are all in an interconnected system and that we are all reflections of each other. And that doesn't mean that people should be able to get away with being bad people or anything like that. But it's just another perspective to have, because so here, I'll give you another example. LaVey continues by saying, are we not all predatory animals by instinct? If humans ceased wholly from preying upon each other, could they continue to exist? So I think this is a really good point here, not one that I agree with, but I think it points out the consequence of a materialist philosophy taken to the extreme, saying, hey, we're all predatory animals by instinct. And basically, that is what it means to be human. That's what he's saying. Would humans cease? Could they exist if they ceased from preying upon each other? And so this is what comes from believing the materialist philosophy. But remember, which is separate from Satanism, what we actually want to do is transcend, not in a sense like, oh, we're trying to get to heaven or nirvana, but rather being able to be masters of ourselves in our understanding of existence, understanding each other, and understanding reality. And by doing this, so this is precisely what we're trying to get humanity from self-awareness to all awareness. So the survival phase to the phase of planetary civilization. And so self-awareness leads to this predator-prey mentality. And in Hegel's system, Hegel's my favorite philosopher. He was the first person to say God is dead, by the way. Hegel talks about the master-slave dialectic, which is interesting. A lot of master-slave dichotomy you're seeing here. Nietzsche talks about the master-slave morality. Hegel talks about master-slave dialectic. And essentially this idea that when consciousness sees something that it believes to be separate from it, it tries to conquer it. And so self-awareness is important because it gives us awareness of the self, but it also brings division because we see others as being separate from the self and threats to our survival and things to dominate and control and destroy, because their being is a threat to our being. Now, and then of course we group together to protect our collective being and see anyone who's an outsider as a threat to our being. And so it causes a lot of division, causes a lot of hatred and bloodshed. And this is why we're in the survival phase. This is why we have nation against nation, religion against religion. All of this is divisive, and it stems from simple self-awareness. But we're trying to get humanity to all awareness, which is about retaining the awareness of the self, but also realizing that we're fundamentally interconnected, all at the base reality, all at the metaphysical underpinnings of reality. We're all in this together. This is a system where everything is reflected and dependent on each other in a certain way. And so we absolutely can and should be rising above our predatory instinctual behavior. We don't want to live in a world that's run by predators. We live in a world that's run by predators, and look how shitty it is. All the rich elite billionaire class and people who are running the world into the ground, they're predators, and this is why we have a terrible world. But the whole point is to transform that. So I just want to point that out. I do not particularly. I don't at all think this is a good mentality to have. But I see what LaVey is saying here. LaVey's point, because a lot of this is a reaction to Christianity. Satanism has evolved a lot and isn't just a reaction to Christianity anymore. But a lot of it was inspired by that. And so, Christianity is like, oh, turn the other cheek. And LaVey is basically saying, why should I let my enemies take advantage of me? Why should I let them let them treat me poorly? That's not something that I'm okay with. So that's what LaVey was saying, and I understand that. I understand that point of view, and I do agree. Don't let others take advantage of you, but also we should be looking to build a better world and not using it to just have hate upon hate upon hate upon hate upon hate. We should be looking for more progressive answers because ultimately that's not good. That's not good for anybody. So LaVey continued. Yeah. So LaVey says, he who turns the other cheek is a cowardly dog. So I'm not a huge fan of Christ's teaching of turn the other cheek, because I do think it can put one in a mentality of letting someone walk over you. I agree with a lot of Christ's teachings. That's one of the ones that I'm not a huge fan of. But I'm also not a fan of an eye for an eye. So LaVey continues, give blow for blow, scorn for scorn, doom for doom, with compound interest liberally added thereunto. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, eye fourfold, 100-fold, make yourself a terror to your adversary. So essentially not just an eye for an eye, but take, 100-fold from them, from what they took from you, make yourself a terror to your adversary. This is not something that one shouldn't let someone walk all over you. You shouldn't let someone walk all over you, but you have to be careful in, fighting fire with fire is just going to make the whole world burn. So justice, we do need justice. We do require justice, but we also need to think about ways of proactively healing the world as well. And this isn't like a, turn over and be submissive kind of thing. This is about being smart and being intelligent and understanding how the world works and understanding that energy cannot be destroyed or created. You can't create or destroy energy. It can only be transformed. And that applies to all the energy in the world and even our internal energy, our psychic energy. Psychic energy meaning energy of the psyche, nothing to do with like psychics, but psyche, energy of the psyche. Our unconscious aspects of ourselves and our will and motivation and things like that. These are all energies within us. And so what we need to do is, instead of, just letting the whole world destroy each other in hatred and burning it down to the ground, is thinking about how to, so for example, in our system, we synthesize justice with care, which means, if something occurs, there should be justice, absolutely. But then care should also be applied like, well, why did this person do this? Can they be rehabilitated? Can they be helped? Can they be healed? So justice should absolutely be there, but we should also look to the root of the problem and see, how can we heal this problem? How can we fix this problem? Because when we look at all the issues going on in the world right now, so many people are just unaliving each other. And ultimately, unaliving each other isn't going to work. The only lasting sustainable change the only change that will be lasting and sustainable is reaching a new level of consciousness and creating changes in our understanding of each other so that we are becoming more unified and on the same page. And that's what all awareness is all about. So anyway, I definitely see his point and, the reaction against, because, I'm not a fan of the turn the other cheek verse. I think that I understand the spirit of it, but I think that people do unfortunately take that to a point where they're letting others walk all over them. So what I want to do is, so we're taking a look here at Satanism, and we've seen that Satanism has this very indulgent self-empowerment mentality. Now, like I said, I was never a Satanist, and but I respect it. I see its value. Now, let me tell you about what I was influenced by, and this is, of course, the Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche. So the Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche, like LaVey, Nietzsche was a fierce critic of traditional Christian values, and he saw them as a way for the weak to control the strong. And in the Antichrist, Nietzsche attacks Christianity for promoting what he sees as weakness and for suppressing the true strength and creativity of individuals. So let me just give you a little quote from the Antichrist. All right. So this is the Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche. And I think you'll see some parallels to the Satanic Bible. So here's the quote. This is from the Antichrist. I condemn Christianity. I bring against the Christian church the most terrible of all the accusations that an accuser has ever had in his mouth. Now I'm going to continue, but one thing I want to note here, I really want to point this out because I think this is really helpful in understanding archetypes. So in LaVeyan Satanism, they clearly and explicitly use Satan as their symbolic archetype that represents their ideals. Now, notice that Nietzsche doesn't. Nietzsche doesn't consider himself a Satanist. Nietzsche doesn't talk much about, Satan at all. But I want you to notice, he says, I condemn Christianity. I bring against the Christian church the most terrible of all the accusations that an accuser has ever had in his mouth. So he's condemning Christianity as an accuser. Well, what does Satan mean? Satan is actually Satan is a Hebrew word that means accuser. It means adversary or accuser. And here Nietzsche is saying, I am the adversary of the Christian church. I condemn Christianity, and I bring against it as an accuser. So really Nietzsche is taking the role of Satan here. Not, explicitly, but you can see it's that archetype. And this is a good way for people who have a hard time understanding what archetypes are. I think this is a good example. Where in Satanism, that archetype is clearly there. It's called Satanism. It has the imagery of Satan as the adversary. Whereas in the Antichrist, Nietzsche is not explicitly talking about Satan or Satanism or anything like that, but he's utilizing that same archetypal energy as the accuser and the adversary of Christianity. So let's continue. This is a very important quote. I condemn Christianity. And by the way, if you also want to see me read more of the Antichrist and do more live streams or videos on the Antichrist, tell me in the comments as well. Remember, I always look at the comments, so tell me. I want to know if you want to hear more of the Satanic Bible. I also want to know if you want to hear more from the Antichrist, so tell me. I condemn Christianity. I bring against the Christian church the most terrible of all the accusations that an accuser has ever had in his mouth. It is, to me, the greatest of all imaginable corruptions. It seeks to work the ultimate corruption, the worst possible corruption. The Christian church has left nothing untouched by its depravity. It has turned every value into worthlessness, and every truth into a lie, and every integrity into baseness of soul. Let anyone dare to speak to me of its humanitarian blessings. Its deepest necessities range it against any effort to abolish distress. It lives by distress. It creates distress to make itself immortal. This eternal accusation against Christianity, I shall write upon all walls, wherever walls are to be found. I have letters that even the blind will be able to see. I call Christianity the one great curse, the one great intrinsic depravity, the one great instinct of revenge, for which no means are venomous enough or secret, subterranean, and small enough. I call it the one immortal blemish upon the human race. And mankind reckons time from the first day of Christianity. Why not rather from its last, from today? The transvaluation of all values. Very powerful quote, very harsh critique of Christianity. And you can probably see a lot of inspiration apparent in the Satanic Bible from these writings. And he ends it by saying, which is really interesting. He's saying, after talking about how terrible Christianity is, says, and humanity counts time from the first day of Christianity. We have BC and AD. I know that's been changed, but and Nietzsche's point is, why not instead count time from its last day? And he says, from today. So he's essentially calling that the end. He's calling for the end of Christianity, and that we should be so celebratory about the end of it that we start our calendars from that day. And then he says the transvaluation of all values, which means revaluing everything that we believe to be right or wrong or good and true. So, very, very powerful. And I was always very inspired by Nietzsche's powerful writing. Now, again, I want to be clear. I don't agree with everything that Nietzsche says. Absolutely. Nietzsche was highly against metaphysics. And the Neogenian system is founded upon a metaphysical system, meta-rationalism, a rationalist understanding of the metaphysical underpinning of existence. But Nietzsche has a lot of very powerful points. And you can see, stepping away from Christianity, this was kind of like the wake-up call that I needed. And so I studied Nietzschean philosophy before I read the Satanic Bible and studied Satanism. And so coming from a Nietzschean background and then reading Satanism, both of them have that very powerful critique against Christianity, which is necessary. But for me, I preferred Nietzschean philosophy because Nietzschean philosophy was all about overcoming, becoming powerful, overcoming the self, going beyond human, overcoming all limitations and barriers. It's very powerful. It's about sculpting yourself. Whereas some of that is in Satanism, but it tends to be more focused on like indulgence and embracing human nature rather than overcoming it. So I was much more drawn to Nietzschean philosophy, but we can see there are a lot of parallels. So both the Satanic Bible and the Antichrist harshly criticize Christianity, but they do it in different ways. So LaVey's book, the Satanic Bible, is more about living life to the fullest, embracing your desires, and rejecting guilt. Nietzsche agrees with this to a point, but it's more about challenging. The emphasis is more about challenging the very foundation of Christian values, or just values in general, and discovering what the motives are behind them. And what Nietzsche believes is that Christianity turns natural human instincts into something sinful and controls people through guilt and fear. So in that respect, that's very similar to Satanism. They both look at these Christian values and they say, okay, they are turning human nature against itself and looking at it as something as sinful and controls people through guilt and fear. But the more focus in Satanism is self-indulgence and embracing human nature, where Nietzsche wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with that, but he would also be like, that's not the point of life. The point of life is to create the ubermensch, become the ultimate being, essentially, to create a new humanity and a new world. So Nietzsche has another book that's a fantastic book called Beyond Good and Evil. And this relates to what we're talking about today. So Nietzsche describes two kinds of morality: master morality and slave morality. Okay, so what does this even mean? What is master morality? So when we're talking about master morality, imagine someone who's very strong and confident, someone who doesn't follow the rules that are set by society. They make their own rules and they decide what's good for them based on their own strength, their own power, and their own success. So Nietzsche considered these people, or called these people, the masters. So for them, what is good means being powerful, brave, successful, and even prideful. This is what Nietzsche considered to be a master morality. And they typically look down on weakness and see it as bad. So masters don't follow the crowd. They are courageous. They value pride. They value independence. They are powerful leaders carving their own path. They don't let others tell them what to do. That's essentially master morality, according to Nietzsche. Now remember, I don't agree with everything Nietzsche says. I'm just giving you an explanation of what Nietzsche believed. So then what is slave morality? Slave morality is the mindset of people who feel oppressed, or what Nietzsche considers weak. So they can't be, so it's about people who don't have power. They don't have power. They're not strong. They're not powerful. And so for them, they're kind of the opposite. What they see as good is things like kindness and humility and selflessness. Now, this is what Nietzsche called slave morality. And in slave morality, things that masters see as good are considered bad. So, for example, people who have a slave morality would see pride and power as evil. So instead, they praise things, again, like I said, kindness and humility. Now, why do this? See, this is where it gets really interesting, because for Nietzsche, reality is a battle between will to power, battling wills battling for power. And so what Nietzsche ends up saying is that basically you have this like powerful ruling master class, and then you have this weak slave class. This is what Nietzsche is talking about here. And Nietzsche essentially says, well, these weak types, what they did he's going to say they basically inverted the system where they're the masters now. And he's saying how they did that was that they turned powerful elements, powerful aspects like pride and power into being bad, and things like selflessness and humility into being good. So because they put forward those ideas, they became the moral superior ones, and now they're in charge. Because like, oh, all those people who were the they're evil, they're sinful, they're dirty. We are the holy, we are the virtuous. But according to Nietzsche, they turned weakness into a virtue because that's all they had. That's the way they could get power. So they turned their weakness into virtue to gain power by saying that being humble and selfless was the true good. They could control the powerful and make them feel guilty about their strength. And so this is how they gained influence and turned the tables on the strong. Nietzsche thought that master morality was more natural and honest, and he believed that the strong should be proud of their strength and not have to hide it or feel sinful about it. He thought essentially, ultimately, that slave morality, which are like the values of Christianity, are weaknesses meant to control the strong. So one thing that I want to point out here, and this is important, is that this doesn't mean that Nietzsche was right or wrong. Okay, I'm not saying that he was right about this. This is what Nietzsche believed. Now, according to my beliefs, again, I think you need a middle ground. The thing about Satanism and Nietzschean philosophy is it's very extreme. And sometimes that's necessary when you're trying to break out of conditioning. Sometimes going to one extreme lets you see, really illuminates the flaws. And, it's like if you have a photo and you turn the contrast way up, you can see things that you might have missed, but it's also going to make the picture look kind of shitty, right? So you want to find a middle ground. And so for example, I agree with Nietzsche that there's nothing wrong with being prideful to a certain degree. If you work really hard at accomplishing something, you should take pride in that and not have to be like, oh, you know what? That wasn't me. It was God. I didn't do any of it. It was just God. It was all God. Praise be to God, not me. No, you worked hard to do that. Take pride. Be prideful. You worked really hard to do that, and you deserve it. And you deserve what you got, and you should be proud of yourself for doing that. Be proud of yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Now, however, pride can get out of hand as well. You can become an asshole if you're just walking around and think you're the shit and look down on everyone. Well, no one's going to want to be around you. You're not going to be a very fun person to be around. That's not where you want to go either. And also when it comes to humility, there are some times when it's a good thing to be humble. You don't want to, again, you don't want to be walking around being an asshole to everyone. Humility is, can be a strength as well. So basically, my position is all of these things, whether it's selfishness or selflessness, whether it's pride or humility, none of them are inherently wrong. None of them are inherently evil. It's how they are used, a time and a place for everything. There are times when you need to take time for yourself and be like, you know what? Hey, I'm sorry. I've had a really hard day. I need to go recharge or whatever. And that's fine. Take time for yourself. And there are other times when you'd be like, you know what? No, even though I'm feeling really shitty, I'm going to go help out my friend because they really need it right now. So there's a time and place for everything. Like I said, Nietzsche was very inspiring to me in a lot of ways, but I don't agree with everything that Nietzsche said. These philosophies are very, very extreme, and extreme doesn't always mean right or good, or we have to understand that we have all of these attributes as humans, as souls, as minds, as entities to work with in different ways, different places, and different times. So when we take a look at this here, this idea of slave morality and master morality, we saw that very similar thing in remember that particular quote in the Satanic Bible that I said to remember. Which one was it? It was, "Too long, right and wrong, good and evil have been inverted by false prophets. There is nothing inherently sacred about moral codes." That's what LaVey said. And so we can see here that the Satanic Bible very often aligns with Nietzsche's idea of master morality. It's about making your own path, asserting your will, and not feeling guilty for wanting to succeed. That's great. That's all great. That's all. There's nothing wrong with that. Taken to an extreme, it can go out of hand. That's where I think LaVey goes to extreme, where he starts talking about humans are predators, so that's just how we are. No, that is something that can be transformed. So one more thing that I want to talk about here, and this is important to me, is I think that really stands out in the distinction here that someone who studied Nietzschean philosophy and then looking at Satanic philosophy, which is a lot about human nature and indulgence in the flesh, which again, I feel like there's a time and place, but Nietzsche was about overcoming, and this is encapsulated in his idea of the ubermensch or Superman. So the ubermensch is a person who creates their own values and lives beyond traditional notions of good and evil. So it's a person who basically goes, I'm not going to believe that things are right and wrong just because people tell me things are right and wrong. I'm going to figure it out for myself. So this person who is someone who is strong, independent, and self-reliant. Now, so far, this pretty much aligns with Satanism. But what Nietzsche really emphasizes here, where Satanism doesn't call for this too much, it doesn't mean it's not part of it. There are definitely, I'm not saying Satanists can't do this. They definitely can, but it's not the primary focus of it. Definitely not. So Nietzsche believed that the ubermensch would rise above humanity. So it's not about like embracing the human nature. It's about rising above it. What is great in man is a bridge. And that's what Nietzsche said. Nietzsche said that man was a bridge between the ape and the ubermensch or overman. So an evolutionary step. You had, that's essentially what Nietzsche is saying. Basically Nietzsche is saying humans suck. The only thing good about them is that they're a transition. They're a bridge to something better. So whereas Satanism is more like, let's indulge in human nature. And I'm not against indulgence, but I think we need to be working towards creating ourselves in this self-overcoming way as well. So Nietzsche talks about the Ubermensch, which is about a new kind of human, right? And remember, Nietzsche's pretty extreme, rising above what he calls the common herd and living a life of true freedom and creativity. So the idea of the Ubermensch is similar to some ideas in the Satanic Bible. Both emphasize the importance of creating your own values and rejecting traditional moral codes, and both encourage living life to the fullest and embracing desires without feeling guilty. And they both promote the idea of being strong and independent. However, like I said, there are major differences. The Satanic Bible focuses more on embracing individual desires, while the Nietzschean ubermensch is about rising above the common herd and creating new values. The Satanic Bible is more about personal empowerment and pleasure and embracing human nature, while Nietzsche's ubermensch is about achieving greatness and going beyond human. It's just again and again and again through Nietzsche's work, going above and beyond limitations, breaking down all barriers, creating yourself, becoming what you are, transforming yourself, overcoming humanity, etc. And this is done in a way that's very incredibly empowering. And I believe in this very much because I think one thing that I find very sad about life is that I see all the potential in humans that they never actualize. I see all these people walking around who could have been amazing artists, amazing writers, brilliant musicians, great leaders. And they just watch Netflix and they just scroll on their phone and they just party on the weekend. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with watching Netflix or partying on the weekend, but in addition to that, one should transform themselves. One should create themselves. And think about how much more of a vibrant world we would have rather than this gray, dull, trashy planet that we have right now. This brilliant new world where everyone is actualizing themselves and taking that potential and this is what it means to, you're sort of revealing your soul to the world. This is about letting your higher self come down through the gateway of the human avatar and express itself in the material world as you connect to that divine aspect of yourself and let it shine brilliantly right here and right now in this world. One of my favorite quotes by Friedrich Nietzsche of all time is, "From what stars have we fallen to meet each other here?" So again, I think that there is a lot of positive things about LaVeyan Satanism. I don't agree with all of it. Definitely not. And I think that there are a lot of positive things about Nietzschean philosophy. I don't agree with it. Definitely not. For me, Nietzschean philosophy has been a strong influence, not Satanism. Because like I said, I studied Nietzschean philosophy first. So not saying that, just because I studied it first. No, what I mean is because it exposed me to the idea of rejecting Christian values, creating your own values, and this incredible empowering philosophy of self-creation and going beyond human. And then so reading the Satanic Bible, to me, it was like Nietzschean philosophy without a lot of the elements that I really liked. So, I wasn't really taken by it, but I see how it can be very helpful for people who are stepping away from traditional religion or just want a system that's more about the self. I see its usefulness, and I definitely don't, have any gripes against it or not. And that's one thing that ultimately, one thing I want to point out too, by the way, is I saw a lot of, I did that video on Satanism versus Luciferianism. And I see a lot of comments by people like arguing with each other, like different like theistic Satanists and atheistic Satanists. They're arguing with each other, and atheistic Satanists are being like, there's no such thing as theistic Satanists. Those are devil worshippers. And then Luciferians coming in and be like, oh, well, this Luciferian. So like, look, guys, we should be all on the same page, and we should all be uniting together to create a better world. And, that's kind of hard in a satanic philosophy that's all about the self. But ultimately, we should still, right, be on the same page and focusing on unity. So, going over to like paganism and occultism and all that, I would highly suggest that you think about ways that you can get along, how we can get along, how all of us can get along, rather than starting fights with one another. Because then it's just like any other religion. Christians going like, oh, you're not a real Christian. because you don't follow this verse in the Bible. Or, oh, you call yourself that kind of Christianity. No, I'm a Catholic and Protestantism came later, and that's not. No, let's not get wrapped up into that very uncivilized mindset. We should be aiming for unity and connectivity. And even if we disagree with each other on certain things, if they're not, there are certain things that one has to be on the same page with. Obviously there are certain things that aren't negotiable, but, arguing over little details that don't really matter when we should be working on unity, I would just suggest that. I think that is something that we should be focused on. But what I want to know from you guys, I want to know what you thought about this. And what I want you to tell me in the comments, what I want to know is what resonates more with you, the Satanic Bible or the Antichrist and Friedrich Nietzsche's ideas. And they're both acceptable answers. I just want to know which one resonates with you more. Tell me in the comments. I'm highly interested. Also tell me in the comments if you want me to read more from the Satanic Bible or if you want me to read more from the Antichrist. I have a lot of great videos on my channel. I highly recommend, if you want to know more about my ideas here, check out my video called Satanism versus Luciferianism. And I also have another video called Lucifer is Not Satan. Check out those videos. I have a lot of videos on my channel that you'll like as well regarding Gnosticism, very interesting sect of Christianity who viewed the God of the Bible as actually being Satan, who is deceiving humanity. Anyway, really, really great stuff. Highly recommend that you check it out. Really important information. And remember, my book is available, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. Check it out. Link is in the description of this video. And if you want to help my channel, help me grow, help me reach more people, help us create a new world, become a member right here on YouTube. You get access to a bunch of excellent perks like members-only videos and Discord access. And you can check it out just by hitting the join button right below this video. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Christopher, Eon, and Vanessa. Thank you very much.